Let's bring in our good friend, Dr. Joe Congini, Sports Medicine Center at Akron Children's Hospital. And Joe, I know you want to go back, and most people have seen that video of Trevor Lawrence really taking a vicious hit in an NFL football game.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the number one text or message I got about the Trevor Lawrence injury was, it was a scary-looking injury, but it is strange that a couple decades ago, those were the kinds of hits that were celebrated. And in fact, are we going to go back to the old ESPN show? Do you remember Jacked Up, where they would take the most vicious hits from the week and they would show them on an ESPN show that really highlighted those types of things and celebrated those types of things. And we know that those kinds of things were a part of our concerned past in the 70s, 80s, 90s, when we were having brain injuries, and then the 2000s, 2010s, when we started to do the studies and we saw all that neurologic long-term damage. A lot of credit to Dr. Ann McKee. She's had a career, 40 years, I think, of studying this at Boston University, and she taught us so much about the numbers of cases of these neurologic problems like chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, and showed us some of those, ALS, dementia, those kinds of things that were related to the very significant, brain injuries and concussions that we had. One of the things that was a little confusing even then, and I think some people struggle even with it a little bit now, Ray, is these are called kind of mild traumatic brain injuries still in some circles. People, mild traumatic brain injury, well, these are not like motor vehicle accidents or the person who fell off the roof, getting leaves out of the gutter or something like that. Those are structural and significant brain injuries that occur from one fall. These were cumulative, and they took place after multiple hits and significant hits. And that's what we don't want to go back to, is this cumulative effect. The problem is it's really hard to kind of measure how much of this cumulative effect does it take. So we've had to talk a little bit about, Denzel Ward and Tua Tagovailoa and all these people. We don't know. We often don't know for years. But the feeling right now in the last 10 or 15 years, with all of the changes and all of the focus, and when we were told, hey, we have to make changes, we can't keep getting numbers like those studies at Boston University where we saw hundreds of cases of dementia and CTE and stuff. We've got to do better than that. Well, I think with a lot of the changes, the rules changes, the equipment changes, the thought process changes in all sports, but particularly with football, the part that I wasn't sure we could do was the part that I grew up watching was people lowering the head and hitting people, in the head and neck region. And because that was the way that you could actually deliver the most significant blow, like in Jacked Up on ESPN. And it worked. I mean, over 5 or 10 years, we were able, through penalties and other things, through teaching people appropriate tackling, we're back to the point where those numbers are going down. But we really have to outlaw those types of hits from Sunday, and we have to be careful with it. A lot of people just are really using the terminology maybe might not have been correct when we said crown of the helmet. A lot of people are looking for this very small area of a crown on the helmet, and if they didn't hit with the crown of the helmet, that shouldn't be a penalty, and these kinds of things. And anything that gives a forceful blow to the head, where I've always talked about the snapback or the rotational mechanism, you can see the head snap back and rotate. And those were the ones that had the biggest long-term effects and cumulative effects. We have to stay vigilant in avoiding those things. We have to put up with the fact that you're going to have to interrupt your football a little bit, and we're going to have to penalize those types of hits. And I think the penalty even still, and I know I'm on the bandwagon about this, college jumped ahead and made it a suspension, and I really don't understand why in the pros and why even in high school we don't have it as a suspension. Remember one other thing, Ray, with the high school in the Ann McKee studies at Boston, most of those were people that had played 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. So it didn't, the numbers that she had on the neurologic effect didn't affect high schoolers very much at all. College, much lower numbers. Many of those were people, pros, that had had cumulative effects for years and years. But the point is, we don't want to go back there. We want to be vigilant. This is part of my career that I really am just, we've made good strides. We don't want to go backwards. And when we have these kinds of things, we have to punish them. We have to teach people that you can't lead with the helmet, and we have to really stay on this thing, stay vigilant with it, so we see this problem all the way through. We really don't know about the significance of the improvement until we're 10 years, 20 years, and we have another big study like the one at Boston University to prove it.
All right, Joe, great stuff, and I couldn't agree with you more as far as taking care of business with these big hits, that's for sure. Joe, thanks for the time, my friend. Always appreciate you making time for us on Wednesday mornings.
All right, Ray, thanks a lot. Have a great rest of the week.
You too, my friend. Dr. Joe Congini, Sports Medicine Center, Akron Children's Hospital, with us on WAKR.